Consider the fascinating paradox of modern Japan. It is a nation of profound, almost contradictory dualities. You have serene, ancient temples nestled beside gleaming, hyper-modern skyscrapers. There's an intricate culture of extreme politeness and formal etiquette existing alongside an intense, often grueling corporate work ethic. It's a place where meticulous minimalist design coexists with the chaotic energy of cities like Tokyo. Travelers and residents alike have long been captivated by these contrasts. For decades, sociologists, historians, and philosophers have tried to build a unified theory to explain it. They've pointed to its history, its geography, its religious traditions. And all of these hold pieces of the truth. But how can one culture contain such starkly different qualities so seamlessly? What if one of the most powerful keys to unlocking this puzzle isn't found in their philosophy books or historical archives? What if the answer lies not in their temples, but in their fields? Specifically, what if the secret to the Japanese character is, of all things, rice? This idea forms the basis of a fascinating and controversial sociological concept. It is known simply as the rice theory. The rice theory proposes something radical yet elegantly simple. It suggests that the unique and demanding nature of wet rice cultivation, practiced for over 2 millennia, has profoundly shaped the Japanese psyche and social structure. The argument is that the way a society feeds itself fundamentally molds its values, its behaviors, and its entire way of thinking. In this video, we're going to explore this compelling rice theory of the Japanese character in depth. We'll unpack how the daily realities of the rice paddy could foster a culture of cooperation, conscientiousness, and group harmony. But we won't stop there. A sophisticated idea deserves sophisticated scrutiny. So we'll also tackle the tough questions head-on. Does this theory actually hold up against real-world evidence? What about other rice-growing cultures like China or Vietnam that have very different national characters? And what are the limitations and potential dark sides of a culture supposedly built on such intense collectivism? Our goal is not to give you a simple answer, but to provide a comprehensive lens. By the end, you'll have a robust and defensible framework for understanding not just this one theory, but the deeper question of how our environments forge who we are. So, to truly understand why rice would have such a profound effect, we need to look at the mechanics of farming itself. Let's dig in. The foundation of the rice theory rests on a fundamental distinction between two types of ancient agriculture, wet rice and dry wheat. On the surface, both are just staple grains. But the way they are cultivated creates two radically different social worlds. Let's imagine a traditional wheat farmer in, say, Northern Europe. This farmer's success depends largely on his own individual effort and a bit of luck with the rain. He plows his own plot, sows his own seed, and reaps his own harvest. His neighbor's success or failure has a relatively minimal impact on his own yield. If his neighbor is lazy or incompetent, it's the neighbor's family that goes hungry, not his. This system, proponents argue, cultivates independence, self-reliance, and a mindset focused on individual achievement. Now, let's contrast this with our hypothetical wet rice farmer in pre-modern Japan. His world is entirely different. Wet rice farming is not a solo endeavor. It's a massive communal engineering project. It requires the construction and constant maintenance of elaborate irrigation systems, canals, dikes, and reservoirs. A single farmer cannot build or manage this alone. The entire village's survival depends on a shared water source that must be carefully managed. Water must be diverted to the highest paddies first, then flow down to the lower ones in a precise sequence. This creates an inescapable network of interdependence. If one farmer upstream takes too much water or fails to maintain his section of the canal, everyone downstream suffers. In a world of shared water, one person's impatience can create a drought for everyone. Furthermore, the planting and harvesting seasons are extremely labor-intensive and time-sensitive. Entire communities had to mobilize to transplant seedlings and later to harvest the crop before it spoiled. This wasn't just helpful cooperation, it was a matter of collective survival. A lone wolf farmer in a rice-growing village wouldn't just be considered eccentric, he'd be a threat to the entire community's food supply. So, while the wheat farmer's motto might be, "to each his own," the rice farmer's is, "we're all in this together." This constant, daily reinforcement of coordination, shared responsibility, and delayed gratification created a powerful social blueprint. It's a blueprint that, according to the theory, would eventually scale up from the village to an entire nation. So, how exactly do the demands of an ancient grain translate into the intricate cultural fabric of a modern G7 nation? This is where we extrapolate from the paddy to the person. The rice theory argues that the survival strategies learned in the fields became deeply embedded cultural values. First, and most obviously, you have the powerful emphasis on collectivism. The we consistently takes precedence over the I. This isn't just an abstract ideal, it manifests in everyday life. Consider the Japanese concept of wa, which translates to harmony. Maintaining group harmony is a primary social goal, often valued more highly than asserting individual opinions. Just as a disruptive farmer could ruin the water flow, a disruptive individual can damage the social fabric. You can see this in modern Japanese offices, which can unconsciously mirror the dynamics of the rice paddy. Decisions are often made through a slow consensus-building process called nemawashi, where support is gathered from everyone before a formal proposal is made. It's about ensuring everyone is on board to avoid open conflict and maintain group cohesion. Second, the theory connects rice farming to Japan's famously high levels of conscientiousness and attention to detail. Rice is a notoriously finicky crop. A small mistake in water level, a pest overlooked, or a delay of a few days in planting can have a disproportionately large negative impact. This, it's argued, fostered a cultural predisposition for meticulous planning, hard work, and a deep sense of responsibility for one's duties. You see this legacy today in the spotless streets, the famously punctual train system, and the incredible craftsmanship found in everything from ceramics to electronics. The train conductor who apologizes profusely for a 30-second delay is, in a way, channeling the spirit of a rice farmer who knows that small errors can have big consequences. The intricate network of neighborhood associations, or tronaikai, that organize local festivals and emergency drills also echoes the cooperative structures of old farming villages. They are modern-day expressions of the need for community coordination. Over centuries, these pressures to conform, cooperate, and be diligent didn't just shape behaviors, they shaped a society. It shows how a simple plant can exert a gravitational pull on culture, bending it into a particular shape. The rice paddy doesn't just grow rice, it grows a society. This is where the theory becomes truly compelling. But it's also where it faces its biggest challenges. Now, I know what some of you, the critical thinkers in the audience, are already asking. It's an elegant theory, perhaps too elegant. This elegant theory has a problem, several, in fact. The most obvious objection, and it's a powerful one, is what we can call the China question. If rice farming leads to Japanese-style collectivism, then why aren't other major rice-growing nations like China, Vietnam, or Thailand exactly like Japan? And that's a perfectly valid question. In fact, it's the biggest challenge to a simplistic reading of the theory. Proponents offer a few potential differentiators. One argument points to China's own internal divide, where research suggests that people in the rice-growing southern regions do exhibit more interdependent thinking than those in the wheat-growing north. This suggests the theory might have some validity, even within China, just not at the national level. Others point to Japan's unique history and geography amplifying the effects of rice, a point we'll return to shortly. But the challenge remains and reminds us that agriculture can't be a single variable explanation for something as complex as national character. Then there's the second major challenge, the dark side of harmony. The video so far has painted a rather rosy picture of cooperation and conscientiousness. But this deep-seated need for group cohesion also has a significant cost. There's a famous Japanese proverb, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down." This captures the immense social pressure to conform. In a culture that prioritizes wa, or harmony, individual expression, dissenting opinions, and even asking for help can be seen as disruptive and selfish. This can stifle creativity and innovation, as individuals may be hesitant to challenge the group consensus. It can lead to a reluctance to report problems or admit mistakes, fearing it will cause trouble for the group. On a more tragic level, some sociologists link this pressure to phenomena like karoshi, or death from overwork, where individuals feel they cannot leave the office until the group's work is done. The same force that builds beautiful cooperative rice terraces can also build a cage of social expectation. It forces us to ask a difficult question: is total harmony worth the price of individuality? This doesn't invalidate the rice theory, but it does add a crucial, sobering layer to it. It reminds us that every cultural strength casts a corresponding shadow. This brings us to a critical realization. The rice theory, as powerful as it is as a lens, is incomplete on its own. To truly understand the Japanese character, we must see rice as one major ingredient in a much more complex recipe. We have to look at the other pieces of the puzzle. First, consider Japan's geography as an island nation. For centuries, this relative isolation allowed a unique and homogeneous culture to develop with fewer external interruptions compared to continental nations. The historical policy of sakoku, or the closed country period, intensified this, creating a cultural greenhouse where the values potentially seeded by rice could grow exceptionally strong. This fostered a strong sense of collective identity and a clear distinction between inside and outside. Second, we cannot ignore the long history of feudalism. A rigid social hierarchy with samurai, daimyos, and the shogun instilled a deep-seated respect for authority, hierarchy, and one's place within the social order. This deference to hierarchy complements the cooperative ethos of rice farming, creating a society that is both horizontal in its village-level cooperation and vertical in its power structures. Finally, and perhaps most dramatically, is the constant threat of natural disasters. Japan is one of the most seismically active places on Earth, frequently facing earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons. This brutal reality has forged a culture of resilience, preparedness, and an acute understanding that personal security is tied to community resilience. When your home can be destroyed in an instant, you learn to rely on your neighbors for immediate aid and long-term rebuilding. This reinforces the collectivist impulse from a completely different direction than rice farming. So the rice theory isn't the whole story. Instead, we should see it as one powerful thread in a much richer tapestry. It interacts with geography, history, and geology to create the complex culture we see today. Viewing these factors together gives us a far more nuanced and intellectually satisfying picture. If you're finding this exploration into the hidden forces that shape culture valuable, it's because you're likely a deep thinker. We create videos like this for curious minds who aren't satisfied with surface-level explanations. Consider subscribing to join our community and continue these explorations every week. You'll be in good company. Now, let's turn this powerful lens from the macro to the micro, from Japan to you. The core lesson of the rice theory is not really about Japan or rice. It's about the profound, often invisible way our environments shape our behavior and thinking. This dynamic is playing out in your life every single day. So take a moment and think about your profession. How does being a software engineer, a nurse, a teacher, or a lawyer shape your thinking even when you're off the clock? Does the collaborative nature of software development make you a better team player at home? Does the analytical rigor of being a lawyer make you more argumentative in friendly debates? Does the constant empathy required of a nurse make it harder for you to set boundaries? These aren't just jobs. They are environments with their own rules, demands, and reward systems. Now broaden the prompt beyond your career. What about the geography of where you live? How does living in a dense, anonymous city shape your sense of community versus living in a small, rural town where everyone knows your name? How does the climate you live in affect your daily routines and social habits? These are your rice paddies, shaping you every day. Your office, your classroom, and your neighborhood are each a field with its own hidden rules, shaping you in ways you might not even realize. The first step to understanding ourselves is to understand the invisible currents of the environments we swim in. Becoming aware of these forces is the first step toward consciously choosing how we respond to them. So, where do we land on the rice theory? We've seen its explanatory power, linking the mechanics of agriculture to deep cultural traits like collectivism and conscientiousness. We've also put it to the test, acknowledging its challenges with other cultures and confronting its dark side. We've placed it within a larger puzzle alongside geography, history, and geology. The final verdict is that the rice theory isn't a perfect, all-encompassing explanation. No single theory ever could be for something as rich and complex as a culture. But it is an undeniably powerful lens. It's a mental model that reveals the profound and often overlooked link between how we live and how we think. Culture is not a single story, it's a library of influences. The rice theory is just one of its most compelling chapters. It reminds us that to truly understand a people, We must look not just at their art, their leaders, or their laws. We must look at their libraries and temples, certainly. But we must also look at the very soil from which they grew. Thank you for joining this exploration with us today. This is a conversation, not a lecture, and every complex topic has more pieces to the puzzle. If you have your own theory, a different perspective, or another piece of the Japanese puzzle, please add it to the conversation in the comments below. We read them and learn from them,